Ohio State's got so much more talent than everybody in the Big Ten. Everything's going to be fine. They're going to run the table, win the whole thing. Don't worry about it. Ohio State's never going to be the same. The program's coming off the rails. What's Ryan Day doing? Bring back Urban Meyer. The Big Ten is passing by Ohio State. There seems to be nothing in between those two extremes that I've heard for the past 10 days or so concerning Ohio State football. But we will chop it up for the next hour with these three, as always. Steve Hellwagon, Bucknuts 247 Sports. Kevin Noon, Buckeye Scoop. Tony Gerdeman. Do you guys need any more representation from Buckeye Scoop? My goodness. All right, another second scoop from Buckeye Scoop, talking Ohio State football. Hey, guys, how we doing today?
Doing good.
Doing great.
Doing great.
Good to see everyone here, and so much to talk about. My goodness. I tell you, when it comes to the fan bases, and I'm not talking about 2 or 3 people, I'm talking about, and you guys get so much more feedback than I do, I'm sure, concerning Ohio State football, because it's only one slice of what we present here. I heard from dozens of people that the same people that told me I was stupid for picking Ohio State to possibly lose a game this year because they were 2 touchdowns better than everyone, and that Ryan Day could never lose a Big Ten or a regular season game because he's not Urban Meyer and he's got this team so well coached they could never lose a game, to 10 days later questioning whether Ryan Day's competent, capable, that the Big Ten is passing this team by. There's no way they're not going to lose another 3 games. And the swing in the confidence from this fan base, sure, there's some level-headed people out there, but I just cannot believe the portion of people out there that are just, yes, there are valid concerns for this team. There's no question about it, Steve, but people are ready to jump off the nearest bridge.
Yes. Welcome to our world. And this is how it is usually every year, year in and year out. I think there's obviously some apprehension here with Ohio State fans, coming off last season that Ohio State lost to Alabama in the manner that they did in the national championship game, that I think a lot of people came into this season a little bit wary about where this team was headed. And I think we all tried to tap the brakes a little bit about the defense and say, look, it's going to be a little bit of a rough go, I think, early on for the defense and probably for the quarterback as well. And both of those things have kind of been borne out. You just have to hope that they're able in the next several weeks to put it together. Has there been enough yet to say that they can't win the Big Ten? No, but there's plenty of red flags with this team so far. And I'm sure we'll delve into a few of them here over the next hour.
Yeah, I've just been sitting here writing Tale of the Tape that'll go on Buckeye Scoop here tomorrow, and certainly a lot of issues around Ohio State, and Akron certainly is the right opponent to be facing at this point. I guess the worst case scenario is if Ohio State comes out and looks pretty mortal against Akron, then at that point, I don't even want to know what the show is going to look like. Ohio State Buckeyes number 648 or whatever we're on this week. But yeah, mortal. They look very mortal. It's not going to take a kill shot of kryptonite to get them. I mean, they might stub their toe and curl up and not be very good. It's just a lot of issues. Can't get home on the pass rush. Still swinging away with cover 1, cover 3 without necessarily having a true free safety that can get it done at that position. Minnesota was a pretty balanced game in terms of run pass, and then we've had a pass heavy game and then a run heavy game. So does that cycle reset this week, and do we see a balanced game, or is this? I think really what it comes down to is a lot of times you have a team and has a good offense. You're like, okay, get us to 30, get us to 35, and we know we're going to be fine. If Ohio State's defense isn't able to right the ship a little bit, Ohio State might just have to score on every possession.
One of the interesting points about this team is we seem to learn something new each game and then also unlearn something new each game, where what we thought we knew is no longer the case. And the Ohio State passing game went away last week, and the week before that, the running game went away, but then the running game came back. And I think this is just an offense and a defense still trying to find itself, still trying to find the right parts, the right pieces in those, and then how many times do you dial this up? And it's a learning process. I think Ryan Day has had his eyes opened about his coaching staff, and we'll see what goes on there at the end of the season. But it was a 7-point loss to a now top 5 team, Oregon. It's not the worst thing in the world. I don't want to see Buckeye fans just, well, now the season's over because we can't possibly win a national championship. Like, that is still alive. But even if you can't, does that mean the season is over? Is that really, like, are you okay with losing to Michigan? I mean, that's still, if you're taking that for granted, then you don't deserve it, and so there are still some things to come down the pike, and stay invested and, support the team. We saw 20,000 no-shows last week, had tickets, just didn't want to go to the game. And I've seen people saying, yeah, but the noon games, and it's like, that's an old excuse because this is a 3:30 game. Like, if you don't want to go, that's fine. That tells me that maybe you're not as emotionally invested as you were. And, that's an unfortunate, that's maybe a larger conversation, but I would say don't give up on the team. Don't give up on the season. We get one of these a year. Enjoy it. It's not just a 1 week thing. It's not a 2 week thing. It goes like 15, 16, 17, 18 weeks. And it's the best time of year. So why not make the most of it? Even if there are a loss or two here, as long as there's a win in November against Michigan, enjoy that. There's still a Big Ten title in the picture. I know Mark said Ryan Day is eventually going to lose a Big Ten game. I don't know that that's true, so, hey, just keep the faith and stay invested and enjoy college football.
Preach it, Tony. Because I got to say, during my 45 years as an Ohio State fan, some of my most enjoyable seasons were not necessarily championship seasons. I think the 1982, 2-3 out of the gate, lost 3 consecutive games, and then going on a run, beating Michigan, winning a bowl game, finishing 15th in the country, but still just savoring the win against Michigan as a huge underdog, winning a bowl game. Those types of seasons that if we have arrived at a place, and I understand that the standard does not have to be compromised at Ohio State, that it's national championship, but we can take off the or bust part of that phrase to say, yes, the standard is let's go win the national championship. Well, you got to do a lot of things before you get to that point, but you can still take some satisfaction and pleasure and enjoyment out of a season that doesn't result in a national championship. And there are still should be traditions and rivalries in college football that mean as much, if not more, than just that ultimate prize. So hopefully some Ohio State fans can, and this mindset that most of the big teams have in their fan bases, that they're pretty much just looking at like 2 or 3 games a year, and the rest of these games are just kind of filler. And we know we got this game, Tulsa, this week, but we just want to talk about Penn State and Michigan, or Oregon, Penn State and Michigan. Those are the only 3 games, or whatever. Just kind of, I would just like us to live more in the moment, enjoy each game. This is what the nuances and the flavor of this particular week. Enjoy the week. There's only 12 games, so it's a precious commodity in sports. All right, let's get more to the nuts and bolts of this thing, Tony, and we'll stay with you with the defense and the performance on Saturday, and then also what we can gain from what Ryan Day had to say on Tuesday regarding the structure of the defense, the scheme, possible progress, which I went out and was criticized for basically saying that I saw some improvement in the defense, in spots on the defense, even considering the opponent on Saturday. But where we think this defense stands right now, and the play calling and the dynamics of the defense right now.
Yeah, so the play calling was turned over to Matt Barnes, who's the defensive backs coach. He came. He used to be upstairs. He's now down on the field. Kerry Combs went upstairs to add an eye in the sky for him. But I think the fact that the run defense was much better is a positive sign. Does Tulsa run the ball that well? They have some talented backs, but Ohio State stopped them, but then they gave up 420 odd yards, whatever passing. So there's some concern there. I tend to like what Ohio State is doing in terms of they're disguising more things. They're doing more things. They're not just staying with their single high and showing which side that the cover safety is going to go to and tipping their hand before the snap. They're doing more stuff after the snap and at the snap to confuse the quarterback a little bit. Did it confuse the quarterback last week? Probably not, considering he went wild and that was an average guy making big yards. But I like the corners. I think the corners are good. The safeties will have to continue to improve. But really, the crux of all of this is the defensive line. Until they start getting pressure, it doesn't matter what is going on in the back end because you can't ask them to cover with no pass rush. And so once that gets ramped up, and we talked to Larry Johnson this week, and he was adamant that things are going to change this week. They need to, because if there's no pass rush, I don't care if you're locked onto a receiver for 3 seconds, 3.5 seconds, he's going to get you. And you just can't ask guys to cover for that long. So they got to get that pass rush going. Maybe we'll see some younger guys involved to make that happen and start pushing these older guys who are on the field but not necessarily making an impact.
Yeah, I think Ohio State, first they say that the best offense is a great defense. Well, Ohio State just needs to have a great offense because we just haven't necessarily seen it out of the defense. One good thing is when it comes to Ohio State's pass rush, Bryant, not Anita, Bryant, college, university, Bryant, ITT Tech. I don't know anything about them other than their FCS. Had 4 sacks against Akron. Auburn had something like 6. I think Temple had 3. So they're giving up a lot of sacks. If Ohio State comes in and gets 1, it's gonna be some fun conversation after that point. But yeah, Larry Johnson came in and being, the big preacher Larry, he wasn't going to hear any of it being on his players. It's on him. But at the end of the day, they got to go out there and they got to win their one-on-one battles out there. He can dictate who's going to be out on the field, that rotation. Let's see a little bit more Tyleik Williams after what he was able to do. When it comes to, I agree with Tony in terms of I saw some things that they were trying to do a little bit different. I don't think that they were as predictable. When Tulsa's quarterback throws for 427, I think it is. I mean, obviously there's some issues there from what I was watching up top in the press box. There was still a lot of times that a lot of 1-on-0 type of situations. You're not going to be able to fix the jet engines at 35,000 feet. It's not going to be a 1-week fix. But Ohio State's going to need to find some sort of fixes along the way because after Akron, who is just not a very good team, I'm just going to call it what it is. Even though people are going to thumb their nose at Maryland and Rutgers, the level of difficulty is going to go up substantially.
Yeah, I think it's particularly troubling that Tulsa threw for over 400 yards. I think that the cornerbacks, Denzel Burke, Cameron Brown, have played pretty well, but you have a real hard time beyond that. And maybe Ronnie Hickman, the bullet linebacker, who's been right around double figures in tackles in all 3 games. It's kind of hard to find anybody else who has held up their end of the bargain on defense. There's still no difference makers at the linebacker spots. I saw something. Tommy Eichenberg played 53 snaps and didn't have a tackle in the game. That's a lot of plays without any production. He did have one nice pass breakup, though, I guess. Lathan Ransom got burned in coverage a couple times, including once for a touchdown. And really still no discernible pass rush, only 2 sacks for the game. Tyleik Williams, the true freshman, finally broke through. Antoine Jackson got one when the quarterback threw it away on an intentional grounding. He was somewhat in the grasp, and Jackson gets a sack because he threw it away to avoid the sack on that play. So that was good, I suppose. But again, Haskell Garrett, Tyron Vincent, Tyreek Smith, you got to, send a search party out to find these guys because they got to start making some plays. And Zach Harrison, figures, you assume he'll be back this week. I was told it was a back issue. Maybe again, it's Akron. There's no real reason to put him back out there this week. And I'd say the same thing with Thayer Munford over on offense, that unless he's 100%, why would you risk, straining that injury even further in a nothing game like this? Ohio State, a 49-point favorite. Whether they'll score 49 points or hold Akron from scoring 20 points. I mean, if Akron scores 20 points, you've got to score 70 to cover. So that seems like an awful lot. So I don't know, but they did beat Miami a couple years ago, 76-5 though. But that was with Justin Fields, I think. So or Haskins, one of those years. So they had a competent off. I think that was Fields got tackled for a safety in one of his first games a couple years ago, and then blew him out after that. So I don't know that anything this weekend really makes you feel great about Ohio State, because it's a nothing opponent, and I'd say get through it without any injuries, and get the defense making a few plays and feeling good about itself, I guess, and maybe that'll give you some good feeling going into Rutgers. Rutgers got a tough assignment playing Michigan this week, a battle of 3-0 teams, and we'll see who survives that and comes out of that on the other side. And, if Rutgers wins, they're going to be sky high hosting Ohio State the following week.
Steve, let's stay with you and turn to the offense and C.J. Stroud. So he throws for 484, then he goes to 185. Obviously, that was a combination of a hot Travion Henderson, but he more so than that, Tulsa going with a defensive concept that was going to take away the pass, especially the deep pass. And so C.J. Stroud is pretty pedestrian on Saturday, throws one fairly bad interception, in which maybe that's not the guy to be going to when you're trying to throw into a crowd, going to the tight end, Jeremy Ruckert. But just in terms of Stroud's performance, progression, the other thing that came to mind for me was, if this Tulsa game had gone more according to script, was Ryan Day contemplating playing other quarterbacks? Not that it's a quarterback battle, but to see some other quarterbacks, and also Stroud's health. It's pretty obvious that he's battling some shoulder discomfort to some extent.
Steve,
you want to go quarterback first here?
I can. The audio cut out for just a second.
Nope.
I don't think he played particularly well. I think he got off to a third slow start in a row, and I think that's what's got everybody kind of confounded with what's going on with him, is that he doesn't come out on the first couple of drives and move them down the field. I mean, they might get a first down or two, but eventually they've had to punt the ball away. And I think people would like to see Ohio State start faster, score on that first possession, set the tone of the game against the lesser opponent. And they haven't done that in any of the games yet. I want to see consistency out of him, which, we've been great at times, and has made some bad throws at times. The lack of accuracy, I think, has been troubling as well. When you look at what he's done, there have been passes that have been high and wide and incomplete, and he's just got to do better, in my opinion. And he was victimized by a drop. I think in the Oregon game, Olave, didn't get his hands on a deep ball that would have changed the game. And in this game, he had a straight drop that would have converted a first down and maybe, changed things a little bit in this game as well. So the guys around him need to play a little bit better as well. So I think it's a combination of things. I don't think that Ryan Day wanted to undermine Stroud by pulling him out. I think he thought Stroud needed the work. I think if he had put somebody else in there, he would have thought maybe it would undermine Stroud a little bit. Plus, it was a 27-20 game in the fourth quarter. That's not exactly the time that you put Kyle McCord in the game and say, okay, here's your first real taste of playing time. Stroud has stunk it up today. We need somebody to, put this game away or help us lock this game away. Go to it. I don't think that's the time that you put a guy in the game for his first taste of playing time either. So it's been a complicated issue. Hopefully Stroud and the offense will play great in the first half this week. That's what you think Ryan Day is hoping. Get up 30-0, whatever it might be, and get some of those other guys in the game and let them show what they can do as well.
Yeah, I have some numbers in front of me of Stroud by quarter, and his slowest quarter is the first quarter. He's 13-22, which is 59.1%. But if you look at the whole first half, he's thrown 1 touchdown and 2 picks over the first half of the 3 games. But strangely enough, in terms of completion percentage, the second quarter is his strongest quarter, 19 of 28. But if you look at the second half of games, he's got 7 touchdowns against 1 pick, somewhere in the range of about 62% there. So he certainly heats up more in the second half than he has in the first half. But I really circle and look at that first quarter, 13-22, 59.1% for 100 passing yards. 100. So averaging 33 1/3 yards passing per first quarter in these 3 games. So that's, that's problematic. And is that a result of, he has 9 incompletions, and I bet you of those 9, one of them might have been a drop. 6 of them were probably high balls, and like 2 of them were probably short hops. So is it a case of that Stroud isn't necessarily performing, or that maybe, that it's a case of where Ohio State is just really coming out conservative, and, there's just not a lot of opportunity there as well. So, I just don't know, but I certainly dug into these numbers in Tail of the Tape piece that I mentioned earlier. I hate kind of spoiling and scooping myself on my own piece that I write now, but there you go. There you got it.
Well, we did see him attack downfield early against Minnesota with the pass that went off of Garrett Wilson's hands, but yeah, they seem to keep stuff short early on, and it's still not great. And is that because he's warming up a sore shoulder? Does it take that long for him to get warmed up? Does it get the shoulder warmed up also to calm down? And then finally in the second half, they can meet in the middle where things are, or I guess like that. And that's finally when he's playing at his best. And again, as Ryan Day said this week, you got to look at CJ Stroud as a true freshman. And these are his first 3 games. And to judge him based on how he's doing for a true freshman, he's doing really, really well. For any quarterback, he's doing pretty well. He's thrown 3 interceptions, 1 each game. You'd like to see that stopped, obviously. But I think there's a couple of problems for me. One is people have been spoiled by Dwayne Haskins and Justin Fields. We know that. I do think there's some just natural – it takes time to be consistent, but he does need to be more accurate than he has been. And as Ryan Day was asked on Tuesday, is that a product of, is the inaccuracy right now a product of his sore shoulder, or is it just a product of the inexperience and the need for more reps? And he said it's probably some of both. And so he's not just going to come out and be, the 70% completion percentage guy that we've become accustomed to. I think he will eventually get there, but not until his shoulder is healthy. And so I'm interested to see how much he plays this week. I don't think he goes beyond the first half. That way you got to get these other guys in there.
We talked about this preseason when he was named the starter going into the Minnesota game in regards to, and only Ryan Day knows this because it's between his ears, just in regards to how he's evaluating CJ Stroud and if he is so strongly committed to him that regardless of what the play is, that he's going to be the starting quarterback to some degree, or whether he's going to be evaluating these other quarterbacks, Kyle McCord in particular, during game action with the thought that I'm considering making a move here if his performance doesn't improve.
Well, I think he still completed 60% of his passes against Tulsa, and that's the one that everybody points to as his worst game. And it's like, who gets benched for completing 60% of their passes? Now you get benched for overthrowing that leads to a safety intercepting it a couple of times, and they've been fortunate that his high passes have been more towards the sideline rather than over the middle waiting for a safety. And maybe that's why they don't throw over the middle so much, because they know he has a tendency to throw high. And if they are going to throw over the middle, it's into the end zone, overthrowing or behind Chris Olave, as we saw last week. But yeah, it's like at this point, his biggest flaw, his biggest problem is he's not Justin Fields or Dwayne Haskins. If this is JT Barrett, I don't think the heat would be so high, although Barrett would pick up yards with his running, and the fact that they're not running Stroud has people angry with Stroud as well right now. And then, of course, you've got Kyle McCord, and everybody knows the backup quarterback is the most popular guy on the team with the fans. So there's just a lot of situations that are aligning against CJ Stroud, not the least of which is, again, he still has to be more accurate than he has been, because it's 60%, I guess, it's not fine, but it would be better if there weren't such wild throws at times.
I'm sure Kevin has some things and he already talked about it a little bit, but I think his inability to run the ball at this point, maybe because his shoulder's banged up, has kind of led to some choppiness for the offense. I think he would have converted several third downs probably if he could run the ball. I thought it was a nice wrinkle after he struggled early that they started rolling him out a little bit to the right, and to where he had two receivers in front of him and could pick out which one it was that he wanted to go to. And he was able to set his feet and make good throws in those situations where I think his footwork has betrayed him and his ball's kind of fluttered a little bit sometimes. I was watching him throw through the binoculars, and it just seemed like there was a strange action on his ball this past week. And I can't really describe it. It just seemed like it was kind of weird coming off of his hand a little bit. And maybe that's part of his shoulder issue or his delivery, whatever it may be. But I really do think the potential is there for him to be a really good college quarterback. I just think that he's 3 games into this and he's learning on the job, and it's not easy. They draw it up and it looks so simple when you see Justin Fields just lead the team up and down the field the last 2 years. He made it look almost easy at times, but it's really not that easy. You really have to be on top of a lot of different things to be able to lead an offense like the way Fields did the last couple of years. So I'm interested to see what direction Stroud goes. And this is an important game for him. He needs to come out and show command and not miss on throws. If he misses on one, so be it. But he's missing on 4, 5, 6 throws, and that's just where your offense bogs down against a quality opponent. You don't want to get to 3rd and 10 against Penn State several times and think you're going to convert it, because you're not. And that's the problem that they're going to run into as this season wears on, is if you don't set up favorable 2nd and short, with some nice plays, you're going to have a problem down the line. So to me, that it's all, as Jim Tressel used to like to say, everything is part of everything. And right now, Stroud's learning that everything is definitely part of everything.
Yeah, when it comes to Stroud and his running, he admitted after the game that there is discomfort, but I'm healthy enough to play or whatnot. But we see him out there, and it seems that he's as unwilling to run in some of these situations as Joe Germain. And I can go back to the Rose Bowl against Arizona State, where in that 4th quarter, there was nothing but green grass in front of Joe Germain, and there wasn't I don't think there was a person in Buckeye Nation that thought that Germain was going to run it, and he didn't run it. So you need to have the threat of the run. Even if you don't have designed Q runs, there has to be the threat to run. But you get dinged up against Minnesota, and you realize that maybe it's a pretty thin margin between you and the next guy or the entire quarterback room, and you don't want to get Wally pipped. You don't want to get hurt and lose your seat in line or your spot in line, and then be kind of looking up for the rest of the season or the rest of your career. So, I don't know. I think that the best case scenario is that obviously Stroud comes out, has a strong quarter plus 2 quarters, and then, can sit there with the headsets and the clipboard in the second half, be able to, not have as much wear and tear on whatever's going on, be able to see these other guys, and that, I think that everybody gets to see what does Kyle McCord look like? What does Jack Miller look like? What do these guys look like against a team wearing a different colored jersey? And then from that point, you kind of move on from there, because as Tony said, yeah, the backup quarterback is always, the most popular guy. Monty Hall made a lot of money hosting Let's Make a Deal because of what was behind curtain number 2 or inside that little box. And more often than not, you got zonked. You'd sit there and you'd have the trip to Napa. You would have the radar range. You would have the book of S&H green stamps. And then you sit there and you think you're going to get something better, and you get 75 pounds of goose turds. So, it is what it is. So I'm not saying anybody on the quarterback room is 75 pounds of goose turds, but we so quickly want to sit there and look at what we don't know. We think that that's going to be better, and that's why there are so many grass is always greener statements out there. So I don't know.
Kevin, you've lost everybody under the age of 40, but that's fine. I'm right there with
Wayne
you.
Brady does Let's Make a Deal now, so I guess I could have thrown Wayne Brady out there. But I'm a Monty Hall guy myself.
You would have lost me if he would have said Wayne Brady instead of Monty Hall. That shows you how old I am. All right, everyone. Welcome into our Buckeyes show that we present every Wednesday right here at the Voice of College Football, Wednesday at 1:30 Eastern Time for your viewing pleasure. We've done this 684 weeks, Kevin, something like that. I've only shown up for 124, but we are here every week to talk Ohio State football with you. I found this little nugget in doing some deep searching online, and this may have shown up on your game notes, I don't know, page 3 or 4. Travion Henderson ran for 277 yards in that game. I guess it was like the 3rd best total in the history of the program. It's pretty astounding.
Yeah, it was crazy. And honestly, at halftime, I looked at his numbers. He had 70 yards. And I'm thinking, wow, he's on pace to go for about 140 yards. That'd be a heck of a game for a true freshman. And then he had 207 yards in the second half, ripped off a couple big runs. And, you've been waiting for him to show all that potential and everything. I mean, he had that 70-yard catch and run against Minnesota in the opener. But obviously, just a tremendous second half for him. In the 3rd most yards in OSU history, behind what Trey Sermon did in the Northwestern game, like 330, something like that. And then Eddie George had 313, I think, or something like that against Illinois in 1995. That was the record for a long time. It's the most by a freshman, shattered the record by Archie Griffin. I think he had 229 or 230, something like that, against North Carolina back in 1972. So you look at it, a lot of history there for Travion Henderson. And, his time is arrived. And they've messed around with Master Teague, and they've messed around with Mayan Williams. And looks like now it's Travion Henderson to be the starter going forward. And I think that's what Ohio State fans want to see. I get a little antsy when they try and put him in there between the tackles, because he's not quite strong enough to squirt all the way through there just yet. But when they block it for him and he hits that hole and makes a guy miss, we're off to the races. So that can make it a lot of fun sometimes. And as Moore Bounce had a great point, Tulsa was guarding against the pass with 8 men in coverage and made it a little easier for him to get into the second level, obviously. And he obviously made a bunch of guys miss from that point on.
Yeah, I think it was the first touchdown when he sat there and, there was a hole big enough that I could have run through it. But then he had the one guy and he sat there and kind of did a little drag. I don't even know. I both of my hamstrings let go at the point that I saw him make the move. And then he just ran right by everybody and then dove over the goal line. The kid really is special. I mean, so much credit to the offensive line for opening up giant holes. I mean, that, again, it takes the talent that Travion Henderson did to turn big runs into touchdown runs, but the line allowed him to turn runs into big runs. And so, Henderson certainly has, all the ability in the world, but the line got him there, especially the line without Thayer Munford, with Matt Jones stepping in. But I think just the nature of fans and talking about what's behind door number 2, there were throughout the entire game. Where's Mayan Williams? Where's Mayan Williams? Are you going to take the ball out of Travion Henderson's hands right now because of this? I don't know, but where's Mayan Williams? Yeah, I guess it's just the nature of how it goes.
What Ryan Day has said about Travion Henderson is once he gets to that second level, then he can do something with it and take it the entire way. And that's something that has been missing, I guess, maybe a little bit, where Master T can get to that second level, but can he make that next guy miss? And that's something that Travion Henderson can do. I'm looking at his third down, his third quarter carries. He carried the ball 8 times for 173 yards, and his rushes went 4, 4, 48, 7, 1, 54, 3, 52. And then he had 2 carries in the fourth quarter of 3 and 31. And what I've mentioned to other people is, remember his first carry of the game that he got just touched by the shoestring and got brought down after like a 9 or 11 yard game. That would have been a 76-yard run. And it was very close to happening, probably should have happened. If it would have been in the third quarter, I'm guessing it would have happened. But you add that run into the mix, and you're looking at 338 yards on 22 carries, which isn't outrageous to think that it was very close to happening that way. And he's a difference maker. And I do think we'll see how he goes running between the tackles more. It was just so easy to run around DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson and all that on the right side. They were doing a good job there. And we'll see how they then change that and alter that. But at this point, Ryan Day didn't want to commit to him being the starting running back, but said he's going to get more and more carries and more action. And at this point, how can you not?
Yakov 22. Thank you so much for the super chat contribution there. Claiming that Tulsa is a country mile better than any team in the MAC. Okay.
I would agree with that. I mean, Tulsa went to the wire with Oklahoma State. Tulsa has played for the AAC championship. Like, I don't know who in the MAC would. I mean, Western Michigan went to Pitt and won, but how good is Pitt at this point? We saw Toledo take Notre Dame to the wire, but how good is Notre Dame? I mean, they're undefeated, so I guess they must be great, but they're not.
Until we start seeing Maction on Wednesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, other made-up days. I mean, I don't really watch the MAC during the first couple weeks of the season, so I don't have a real good read on the conference. But I was talking with a couple of other writers who were like, that Tulsa team, from what I saw today, wasn't half bad. And of course, we're like, well, did Ohio State make them look a little better than they are? I'm sure there was a little bit of that, but I think that Tulsa team was better than what the line indicated.
Yeah, and they were missing like their first seven starters or something like that in the opening season loss to UC Davis, which obviously is bad, but we'll see what Tulsa does this season. I don't think they're going to be as bad as what their 0-3 record indicates right now.
You guys hit upon the work of the offensive line, and there's never a rushing performance like that isn't bolstered by the offensive line, obviously. And to Kevin's point, 5-yard runs by an average back are turned into 15 and 20-yard runs, et cetera, by an elite back, or in this case, a very talented back who may one day be an elite back, but had an elite day. But going back to the offensive line, there's been a lot of movement up front in terms of positioning that we've talked about in the past. Based on the information we have, and also factoring Tony Thayer-Munford and his situation into the mix, what does this offensive line look like, and do we expect any more changes?
Ryan Day said on Tuesday that Thayer-Munford's injury is not long-term, which to me says he's out for this week at least. We talked to Matt Jones today. So he's the guy who stepped in at left guard for Thayer-Munford, played well, graded out a champion, I believe. And he's done that before. He stepped in when needed on the interior. So I would expect it to be Nick Petit-Frere at left tackle, Matt Jones at left guard, still Luke Whippler at center, Paris Johnson and DeJuan Jones on the right side. I think that's pretty much how it's going to go. And we'll see how Harry Miller gets, whenever he's ready to go. We saw him coming off the practice field last week. And we'll see. We'll probably keep an eye on him tonight to see if he's coming off the practice field tonight. But and maybe get him closer to playing. But I don't believe he was asked about yesterday, so I don't know the latest update on him.
Yeah, it's the nature of what's going on at Ohio State right now. You're 2-1. You lost a game to Oregon, and everybody who follows the team and watches the team is second guessing every personnel decision that the coaches are making, including the offensive line. Was it right that DeJuan Jones is playing tackle and Matthew Jones wasn't in the starting lineup at guard, and Munford should be back at tackle where he's been a mainstay? So, I just say that the coaches watch these guys every day in practice, and they have a feel for what everybody can do and what the best combination is. And I think Matthew Jones is a godsend, that he is so good and so accomplished and did so well last season that he's on hand as your sixth offensive lineman and is ready. Well, in this case, I guess he'd be your seventh offensive lineman, because Harry Miller, should have been in the starting lineup too at center. Sixth or seventh offensive lineman, you're kind of your utility guy that can go in there and plug a hole when one exists. And I fully would agree with Tony. There's no reason for Thayer Munford, whatever his injury, I think it was a right leg or right ankle or right knee, whatever it was, when he went down, there's no reason for him to be rushed back in there 7 days later to play against the team that they should beat, 55-25. I just cracked myself up with this score because, 50-point favorite for a team, as we said, that can't stop anybody is kind of interesting. I don't know how that's going to play out, but at any rate, I just think that Thayer should have the week off to get fully healthy, and they need him back for Rutgers. That's the game. That's the next game. That's the next most important game on the schedule is Rutgers. This is like a personal appearance on Saturday. Throw the helmets out on the field, wave to the crowd, score your 8 touchdowns and move on. It's just kind of, get those young kids, Emeka, Buka, and Marvin Harrison Jr., some run. Jack Sawyer should play 40 plays at defensive end. There's no reason for Zach Harrison to play in this game either, unless, he's able to practice all week and he's 150%. There's just no reason for it. But at any rate, I think that you stick with this offensive line. I don't think this offensive line is the problem. I think they've got bigger problems in terms of the running game. And maybe we'll get into that, I guess, as they get into Big Ten play. And we'll see if they're able to establish the run at the same level that they were able to in week 1 and week 3 against a quality opponent. Oregon sat on the tailback, didn't allow the running back to get off. And I think quarterback run's got to be a part of this at some point, part of solving that whole conundrum.
David Greenshield addressing the linebacking core as even beyond what we see here in 2021 and last season as an issue. When was the last time the Buckeyes had truly a great linebacking core, and what's going on there in regards to recruiting, development there as linebackers? Maybe that Raekwon McMillan group in 2016 was pretty capable.
Rome Baker.
I thought the linebackers weren't terrible last year. Were they like the highlight of the world? No. You do have to go back to some previous teams, into the teens for Ohio State, but I don't look at last year's linebackers and say, oh, wow, the 20 linebackers. It was an odd year and there were a lot of things, and everybody wants to dunk on Tuff Borland or dunk on Pete Werner or whatnot. Linebacker recruiting is going to be very good for this year. You already have verbal commitments, and I don't see any way that they don't ride all the way through to sign letters of intent with 5-star guys like CJ Hicks and Gabe Powers. Certainly you do lose out on Dasan McCullough, who ended up flipping his commitment to Indiana. Ohio State's still in the market for another linebacker if that guy fits what they need. But I do agree that there have been some incomplete grades. There have been some misses. News from today, Dallas Gant enters the transfer portal to transfer out of the program after 10 tackles this year, but most of that action coming against Minnesota in week 1. I'm not going to say that the linebackers are just, we shouldn't be having conversations about them not living up to standards or whatnot. But I don't think we have to go back to Jerome Baker and Raekwon McMillan and some of these guys to find some success from the linebacker group. But then again, maybe I have a recency bias in looking at 2020, and because, the secondary had such an issue last year, and that, we were a year off of Chase Young, and that the defensive line didn't look very good. Maybe the linebackers, maybe it was the five hanging out with a couple of twos to look better. Maybe the linebackers were a five and the D line and the secondary were twos. I don't know.
Ohio State had 4 linebackers last year, and those 4 linebackers are all on NFL rosters cashing checks right now. So that's a pretty good group. The year before that with Malik Harrison and Pete Werner and Tuff Borland. Say what you want about Tuff. That was a good group. Malik Harrison's a starting NFL linebacker. So, yeah, I don't think you have to go back that far either. But it's been a while since there's been a star middle linebacker at Ohio State. Raekwon McMillan was a 2-time second-team All-American. Before that, Brian Roll was, I think, maybe an All-Big Ten player there. And there has been some issues there. And the fact that you've got some seniors who maybe didn't have – it took a long time, as Kevin said, Dallas Gant is gone because he had been bypassed. It's Cody Simon, I think, was a little bit banged up, but he's still not starting in front of Tommy Eichenberg. He started last week, but was that because Taraji Mitchell was out? And what does it look like this week if Mitchell is back? Is it Cody Simon in the middle? Is Eichenberg finally going to come off the bench? And how much is he going to come off the bench? I don't see this group being the great group of linebackers that people are looking for. I also, if you're only going to play 2 linebackers, you should be able to find 2 really, really good linebackers, and they haven't been able to do that yet. And I don't know, I know everybody's really excited about CJ Hicks. I am as well. He reminds me of Ryan Shazier, although Ryan Shazier is more of a defensive end in high school that just went and attacked the quarterback. And, CJ Hicks can run around. I don't know that he could do that as a freshman, though. It still took Ryan Shazier a little bit of time, even though by the end of 2011, he may have been their best linebacker. So you don't want to say wait till next year as an Ohio State person, but there should still be enough. Taraji Mitchell, Cody Simon, Kayvon Pope has played well in passing downs. You should be able to put something together there to have something as good as a Wisconsin and even though that's a 3-4 defense and this is a 4-2-5, like if Wisconsin can find 4 linebackers, surely Ohio State can find 2.
Yeah,
All right, folks. Go to it.
I was going to joke Hawk, Carpenter, and Schlegel in 2005 was a bang-up group. And then whoever the third wheel was with Freeman and Laurinaitis, maybe Brian Roll, I don't remember.
Ross Homan,
they weren't too bad, I guess then. I don't know. Their linebacker recruiting when Bill Davis was there went way downhill. In Washington, it's taken him a couple years to cycle it back up. And as Tony said, I mean, to me, the 2 best linebackers associated with Ohio State right now are high school seniors. And, it puts a lot on those guys coming in next year. You hope maybe one of them is good enough to crack the lineup next year and one of them the following year. But because it doesn't look all that promising right now. People brought up Poly EA Nateote. I hope I got that even relatively close. I guess he only played 1 play near the goal line and made the stop and really didn't get back in the game. And he brings a physicality, I think, but I think he comes in as the 3rd linebacker, maybe when they pull the bullet out. They are in love with the bullet right now with Ronnie Hickman. That is an experiment that has worked really well. He's getting 10 tackles a game. Kind of hard to pull him out, although you wonder how many of those are 15 and 20 yards downfield too, because you didn't have that linebacker in the game. I don't know, but man, they got a lot of issues. They got a lot of problems. If they could play 12 or 13 guys on defense, maybe they can appeal to the Big Ten and just say, look, our first 11 really aren't that great. We've been so good for the league for so long. Can we get a dispensation to play with 12 guys? That might help them.
They're playing a different brand of football than all the other supposed contenders in the Big Ten. And I say that just because we just started league play with a few meaningful games in the league. So we're going to figure out here in the next few weeks who truly is a contender in the Big Ten. But right now, it looks like that upper crust, either below or with Ohio State, is pretty thick. My goodness. Iowa, Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan State. We're not even talking about Maryland at 3-0, and Indiana, even though they've lost 2 games, showed that they're pretty capable against Cincinnati. So this could be a fun free-for-all if Ohio State doesn't get their act together and maintain its position of superiority. But Ohio State's doing it in a much different fashion than everybody else. All the teams that I just mentioned, the 2 from the West and everybody from the East, is running the ball down people's throats and playing pretty superior defense. And it's going to be pretty fascinating, Tony, to see this Big Ten race if Ohio State, again, doesn't separate itself.
It's like a dream matchup of a bunch of teams that run trestle ball versus Ryan Day ball. And we'll see who is superior when they all get together. And it's unfortunate that Ohio State is playing defense as poorly as they are, because you wonder how well they will be able to stop the run. They did it better against Tulsa, but you look at Michigan's running game right now. To me, it's legit. It's leading the nation in rushing. I don't expect that to stay, but if they finish in the top 30, top 25, that's really, really good for them. And it's not something they've been able to do since the Rich Rod years. So I think there's something there. But by the time Ohio State plays them, the defense should be more equipped to handle whatever. And at that point, we'll see how things have gone for Michigan and whether they still are as enlightened right now as they are. But I don't think Ohio State's in a position right now to overlook anybody when that pass defense is what it is. And then each time they fix something, you fix the pass defense. Now there's a leak in the rush defense, and then you do that, and it's like they only have one cork for the 2 holes in the boat, and they try to maybe cover one of the holes with their hand, and it doesn't do enough. And so they've got obviously some work to do, and some opponents that, while they aren't necessarily dynamic, they are sound and they play solid defense that could give Ohio State some trouble a couple of times this year, maybe a few.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the race ends up looking like, because the uneven nature of scheduling, and that's not me singling anybody out. I mean, Michigan played Washington, and for so many years Ohio State's gotten dinged because they set up a series with somebody and then they don't end up being nearly as good as we expected. And I think a lot of people expected more out of Washington this year, and they were summarily thumped in that game. But we'll get a better idea even as soon as this week to see what they're made of and what that ends up looking like. And I think a lot of people are really high on Iowa. I don't know if there's enough consistency at the quarterback position there, as Steve likes to say with Wisconsin, with their coach Paul Blart. We'll see what comes there. I don't think Graham Mertz has necessarily been the guy, but then again, that's coming off the heels of that guy, Jack Cohn. So I don't want to get into that one too much, but I think it's going to be an interesting race. And I think if you look at the Big Ten East in general, the Big Ten East is pretty stacked at this point. But as teams start playing each other, it's a zero-sum game. Somebody's got to win and somebody's got to lose. And I think you're going to see teams coming back down to earth because of it, because you're not playing, you're not playing the Akrons of the world.
I'll just throw in a couple of thoughts there, and it is a big game, I think, for Wisconsin this week with Graham Mertz going against Jack Cohn, the former Wisconsin quarterback, playing for Notre Dame. Notre Dame's defense has been kind of substandard. Wisconsin's just kind of been meh so far in the games it's played. So that'll be interesting. I don't know who I'm going to pick in that game, but I might pick Wisconsin, but I don't know. It's on a neutral field there at Soldier Field in Chicago. Probably fans will be split pretty much down the middle, I would think, or maybe 60-40 for Notre Dame. In terms of Ohio State, the one area that is most troubling to me is third down defense. And I just looked it up. I I scrolled down from 1 to 50, and I knew they weren't going to be in the first 50. Then I scrolled down 51 to 100, and I was like, damn, they're not even in the top 100. No, not only not in the top 100, they are 126 out of 130 schools in third down defense. They are allowing opponents to convert on third down 53% of the time. And that's unheard of at Ohio State. Typically, that number is like 20% or 25% or something like that. I think Tulsa last week was something like 8 of 17 or 9 of 17. And they had one was a 3rd and 12. And you're like, okay, they're finally going to get off the field. Nope. The kid threw a little pass out into the right flat, and the running back or whoever took it and he got just, if we could see that yellow line watching it live, you'd see him just fall right over the yellow line for a 13-yard gain. And it's first down, Tulsa. And it's just like, you can't beat teams when you allow them to sustain drives like that. And, Tulsa wasn't good enough in the red zone. Yeah, 9 of 17, I think Kevin just pointed out. Tulsa, in my opinion, really messed up. It was 4th and 1 at the 3-yard line, and they kicked a field goal. And I don't know what Philip Montgomery was thinking. It was like you came all that way. You took that check for $1.3 million, whatever it was. It was like, dude, they let you all the way down to the 3-yard line. You don't even have to score. Just get to the 2, and it's a first down. If you don't get it, you're leaving them the ball on the 3-yard line. I mean, it was the first quarter. What did they have to lose? As it turns out, in the fourth quarter, it's a 27-20 game. Boy, he wishes he would have had those 4 points back, I'm sure. So, Ohio State's got a lot of problems, but I think somebody on third down has got to start making some plays. And I made a comment in my chat. I think my chat was 2 nights ago, Monday night. Somebody was asking about the defense. I said, look at this defense. You only had 2 guys who'd ever started or been mainstays on the defense prior to the season that started this week with Harrison and Proctor out. And that was Haskell Garrett, who's done literally nothing this year other than return that fumble against Minnesota, and Tyreek Smith, who has done literally nothing this year for the most part. And I said, stop and comprehend this and think about how good Ohio State's been by and large for the last 30 years, even maybe more than that on defense. There is nobody, and I mean nobody, suiting up on this defense currently with the way they've played in the first 3 games who would have started on any defense at Ohio State at any point in the last 30 years. That's how bad it's been. Now, has Denzel Burke played great? Yes. But, I still stand by that comment. He's probably the 3rd corner on a lot of teams. Haskell Garrett was great last year. He started last year. He wouldn't start last year if he played like this last year. So, they got some major issues, and it's not just one. It's not just the front. It's not just the linebackers. It's not just the secondary. They need to start triggering and making plays on all 3 levels on defense, or the beatings will continue. And that's, Rutgers could beat them. Maryland could beat them with Tago Gavailoa if he got hot somehow. I mean, we saw it 3 years ago, 52-51, the Haskins game out there. Maryland played them right down to the nub. Rutgers has never played Ohio State close, but lo and behold, the game's at Rutgers. This could be the year. So if they get a crucial turnover or whatever, maybe that's a 4th quarter game. Don't want to say that. Don't want to see that. But they've got a lot of problem. I mean, they demoted Kerry Combs and had somebody else call the defense, and it wasn't a panacea. They gave up 500 yards to Tulsa, who didn't even get 400 yards against Cal Davis in a game that was played in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I mean, stop and comprehend that. They gave up 500 yards to Tulsa that didn't even get 400 yards against Cal Davis. I mean, that'll tell you where your defense is right now. Kerry Combs had to be sitting up there in the box just with his arms folded about the 3rd quarter saying, see, I told you. It ain't this easy, guys. And, this defensive front's getting nothing done, and that's where it all begins to me.
And I got to think that 3rd down defensive statistic is also a byproduct of not making any negative plays or stops on 1st and 2nd down that have set up shorter down and distance on 3rd down.
Yep.
Yeah. It has not been good through 3 games. But it has been good for an hour plus with Kevin Noon from Buckeye Scoop, Steve Hellwagon from Bucknuts 247 Sports. We appreciate them. And of course, Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop as well. Check out everything that they've got available. Kevin, we'll start with you in regards to where can people find you?
Yeah, exactly. You can find me at BuckeyeScoop.com, and you can find me on Twitter at Kevin_Noon. I've taken a couple weeks off from my own personal YouTube channel, but hope to be launching that back up here this next week. But we will kind of see. If Ohio State doesn't look very good against Akron, that may slow me down for another week.
All right, Steve.
Nothing big cooking right now, just bucknuts.com, covering Ohio State football, and basketball is going to be firing up. We're having a media day next week with that. So the vacation is over. It's time to start covering 2 sports at once. And I look for them to bounce back and play pretty well this week. Akron actually has done some nice things offensively. Their quarterback, against Bryant, and again, it's Bryant, it was 26-30, but how much better is Ohio State's defense than Bryant's? I don't know. I mean that as a joke, of course, but I guess we'll see if this guy can do it. As I was typing up their lineup, they have like 7 freshmen who start on offense for Akron. The quarterback is a sophomore. And all but one guy is in his first or second year of eligibility. They have 1 junior and no seniors starting on the offense. So their coach, Tom Arth, is a guy who played at Cleveland St. Ignatius. He would have been there around the time Anthony Gonzalez was there, late 1990s, early 2000s, and went to John Carroll, was the head coach at John Carroll, then was the head coach at Chattanooga, and then got the career break of a lifetime to go coach at Akron, where he's 2-19 in his 3rd season, and one of those wins was last week over FCS Bryant. So he's having a rough go of it there at University of Akron.
Yes, the all-time winning percentage there at Akron, and then if you want to throw in Kent to represent the Akron area, has to be amongst the lowest in the history of college football. All right, folks, I'll say this as I stated once in a while, what we deliver here each and every Wednesday, there are other really good Ohio State podcasts out there. These guys are involved with some of them. There's no question about that. But with Kevin, Tony, and Steve each and every week, please Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, just put Ohio State on your contribution. Get here with the Super Chat once in a while as well. Let me know if you've got any sponsorship opportunities as well at MarkRogersTV at Gmail. You can always hit me up there, MarkRogersTV at Gmail. Steve, Kevin, try to stay awake during the game. As Steve has projected, a 59-9 score. If you take the Vegas over-under combined with the against the spread number, that's what we're looking at. So there you go, 59-9. Guys, have a great week.
If that's what it is, we'd take it.
Yep.
We'll see you back next Wednesday.
Sounds good.
All right.